and we're from the DigiSoc Careers team. Today we're joined here by Raunaq, who's an Associate Product Manager at Deputy, and today we'll be exploring upskilling into product. So Raunaq, could you give us a brief intro into yourself and an uncommon fact that people might not know about you?
Ooh, okay. So hi everyone, I'm Ron. I studied software engineering at the University of Queensland in Brisbane. I graduated start of last year, and I've been working in product for the last just over 1.5 years, nearly 2 years now. Started off my journey in e-commerce, and now I'm in SaaS, and I work for this company called Deputy, which is a workforce management platform. We do everything from scheduling, timesheets, compliance, leave management. So a pretty big product, and I personally own the leave management surface area of the product, and it's very exciting to be here today with you both.
And the one uncommon fact that people might not
Oh yeah,
know.
absolutely. I was actually thinking about this one on the light rail today. I was like, I have many uncommon facts about myself, but I think kind of gross, but I hate to cut my nails.
Right.
I obviously keep them trimmed
Yeah.
as much as I can, but whenever I have to do the actual act,
Yeah.
it's like I just want to get done with this as soon as possible.
Right. Yeah.
So I do it like once every 2 weeks.
Mm.
But whenever I do it, like whenever I'm about to do it, I dread it because I'm like, God. And I don't know why. Like I've always hated it while growing up, but
Yeah.
I always do it. So I think that has taught me grit, which is a very important trait for a PM.
Yeah.
Just like have to do it to get it done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Is it just the fingernails out of curiosity?
Just the fingernails.
Okay,
just the
so
fingernails. I'm fine with
toenails
toenails. I don't know why.
Oh.
Like maybe I have a traumatic memory which I don't remember. Like
With
I
the
accidentally
fingernails?
cut my finger or something when I was young. But yeah, I just don't like it. It's a little pet peeve of mine. Yeah.
That's fair enough. I'm actually the opposite. Like I'm pretty pedantic about my nails. Like I like to trim them, and I like to file them as well. Like I'm extra. So.
Oh my god, nice. Yeah, whenever they grow out a little, like now they're growing out a little bit, so I'm just like I have to trim them now.
Yeah.
Like, I can't like see them long enough, so whenever the days are coming by, I'm like, oh god, holy shit, I have to do it now. All right. Yeah, so that's an uncommon fact about me that not a lot of people know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So now breaking into the product management role. So what exactly does an associate product manager do, and how does this differ from a product manager?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I think product management it's a kind of like, especially it's a new role in Australia, and it's been around for quite a while in other countries now. Associate product manager versus a product manager is very different from company to company and industry to industry. In a lot of companies, like especially if you work in big tech, associate product managers usually support more senior product managers to manage or maintain their product portfolios. While in some companies, associate product managers usually have the same level of responsibilities, and their day-to-day is pretty much very similar to what a regular product manager or what a regular senior product manager would do. But the difference comes in terms of the level of nourishment and the level of care and the level of mentorship and guidance they get day to day to perform those same duties as their senior counterparts would do. This is kind of the case at Deputy, where like I look after my area of the product, very similar to mid-level product managers or senior product managers. But the level of guidance and the mentorship that I get every day is very different to how senior product managers get to do it. So I think that really makes a difference when you're early career, because especially when you're this young and you're put into a leadership role, it's very hard to feel, I mean, of course, imposter syndrome. So having that coaching in an associate role is very important, irregardless of are you helping other PMs, or are you like driving a product of your own? So I guess that makes a difference in terms of how even like within companies people see associates versus product managers, mid-level or senior product managers. It's just that they know like everyone's capable of doing the same job. It's the level of support that they get to perform their day-to-day operations. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you touched on a good point there of like an interesting point, I guess, to me, of imposter syndrome as well. Is that something you personally experienced when you first entered into a product management role?
Absolutely, and I
Yeah.
still feel it day to day. And like we've had imposter syndrome is such a widespread concept in product that we've had multiple conversations about it within our PM team as well. Multiple conversations I've had with my manager, and he still feels imposter syndrome every single day when he's making decisions, when he's like, having hard conversations or driving like requirements forward. I think it's something that you kind of have to live with. And that I think I was trying to like one night I was trying to think of why like PMs feel a lot of imposter syndrome. And I think based on the conversations that I've had, I've kind of I think that it's mostly because whenever you work as a PM in a tech team or in a triad, you always have the product designer who would, design and think of UX and like come up with wireframes and prototypes, and you have the engineer or the tech lead who are always, converting those into reality by writing code. But then as a PM, you kind of feel like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You day to day, like it's kind of hard to feel what you're doing, but it's the level of impact and the level of like connectiveness that you bring within team, which helps having a PM in the team. You're the connective tissue which connects your internal team together as well as connects your team to the broader business outside together as well. So I'd say like it's something that I battle every day and I get out of it successfully, but I still can't help feeling it every day. And I think I'm comfortable with that feeling now. As my manager always said, like you have to be comfortable with that feeling because you're going to feel it for the rest of your life if you're in this career. So yeah, that's one piece of advice I would give to even like budding product managers as well as someone who's in the industry right now. Because I know for a fact that if someone's working as a PM, they would definitely feel this at some point in their life. So yeah, it's just let it stick with you and be comfortable with this uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, that's great advice. Be comfortable with the uncomfortable. All right. Yeah. So moving on to the second follow-up question we had, what would you say were some of the most essential skills that you currently use as part of your day-to-day role as a product manager?
I think for me the most important skill for any PM would be critical problem solving and I was thinking about why again on the light rail while I was coming here. I think whenever I used to do uni assignments, right? Like you always get this, like you have the assignment in front of you, there's like a problem and like you have like how the marks are going to be, divided across different parts. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. Like to get a distinction, I would need to do this, and to get a high distinction, I just need to put in a little bit more effort and, solve this part of the assignment. In the real world, I was thinking, problems are like problems don't have constraints. Real world problems are tenfold more challenging and harder than a uni assignment, right? Because you're literally operating under no constraints. So I think a PM's job is to scope down that problem to a solvable chunk, and then iterate on the solution with the help of his team. So I think like problem solving again is one of the biggest things that I, if I ever interview a PM, I would even look for, and I guess one of the most critical things that can like set a PM up for success. Another skill that I was thinking about, and this is something that I've read on a lot of PM blogs and articles and podcasts, is this concept called high agency. So high agency is pretty much a term which it's a concept which basically means how a person thrives in an environment which works against them, or in a very harsh environment. Like what is the attitude, or what is that natural trait that they bring into a conversation or into a hard problem space. So high agency is pretty much, can this person drive forward things despite increasing complexity, or can they still stick in when things get hard? And that is, I guess, one of the most important things that I train myself for as a PM, to develop high agency, to not give up when things get hard, and to just push through, or not blame my circumstances. They're this person didn't really pull his socks when they should have, or these circumstances were off, the market was off. There will always be variables which are out of your control, but how do you pick up the factors which are still under your control, pull them together, and still drive things forward? That's how I define high agency, and that's something that I still want to develop and still keep striving for every day. So that's again another thing that I look for. And the last thing, which is depends on the kind of PMing a person is interested in, but I'm very, very fascinated by developing a UX or design sense, and that is because we solve problems on a high level. We think about experience or customers and users all the time. And especially at the start of the problem, it's very important for us to have a vision of how we can solve something. So having a product design sense, or how would I solve this visually, or how would this particular flow or action break down into multiple steps? What are the different edge cases, or what are the different corner cases that would come up here? How can a user how can this entire thing go wrong completely? How do I make them happy throughout this entire journey? All those things are kind of defined by how well a PM can think about users and product design and UX. So that's another thing that I guess I personally really like about being a PM, that you get so close to looking at how people would interact with your product, and also trying to design or define things that way. So that is, I guess, another skill that's very, very important for a PM to develop early on in their careers.
Yeah. And just touching on that point of UX, that final one, how do you really engineer the best experience for a customer? Is it based on looking at analytics, for example, or is there sometimes a degree of bringing in your own assumptions as well, just based on past experience of I know this has worked in other companies, or this has worked in the past, and then you bring that in? Yeah. Or is it sort of just...
You've brought a very good point. So the thing that you mentioned, the second, which was trusting your gut, or bringing your assumptions to the table. I think there's a term for that called product sense, which is how well can you judge a particular a flow or a solution. And it's a very abstract concept, and there's no strict definition to how you think of product sense, but that's, I guess, the essence of what you were saying. Would you trust your gut to say the user would do this in this given scenario? Or would you make an assumption that the user will definitely do this before they do this, and how well that turns out to be? So that's kind of how I define product sense, and I kind of rely on that gut instinction a lot of the times. But at the same time, validating that with metrics or data, be it quantitative or qualitative. So always going back to customers and saying, how would you do this? If Deputy, or if any other company was to solve this problem for you, how? Flip the tables on them, because a lot of the times users already know what they want. So asking them what they want and how they want it really makes your job easier. Once you have 10 or 15 or 100 data points about how a user would want it, you kind of combine them into a unique, original one, which solves it generically across the board. So that, and at the same time, quantitatively tracking how users are performing things on your platform, or where the drop-offs are, where they're encountering a lot of errors, where they're experiencing friction. All those things are very important in making decisions as to this is where the UX can be better, or this is where things can significantly improve. So yeah, it's a very, very broad thing.
Yeah, that's the beauty of, I guess, product management.
Yeah, absolutely. So many things to do. Yet so such less time.
So earlier you said that you were a software engineer at the University of Queensland. So at the time, what were your passions and area of study at uni?
So when I was in year 12, I chose to study software engineering, which is pretty much a computer science degree, because I was very interested in solving problems. Like I've always been, inclined towards building things and coming up with ideas out of nothing. And when I was in year 12, when I got a little bit into programming, I thought this gave me the power to actually convert ideas into actual tangible things that people can interact with. So which is the reason why I chose to study software engineering. I really enjoyed studying computer science throughout uni. And then somewhere around the end of second year, I was thinking I do enjoy writing code, but I think the level of problem solving that I want to do is more on a high level rather than debugging things or converting floats to ints and ints to floats. And that's why that was the time when I started kind of getting more and more interested in product design and UX design. So I was lucky enough because at UQ we had a HCI specialization within software engineering. So I started taking more design or human-computer interaction oriented courses. So learned a lot of design theory through that. And I was lucky enough to start working in an e-commerce startup as a product designer, which was my first real world job of being a UX designer and thinking about hard UX problems. So given those two things, studying computer science and working part-time as a product designer, I've always heard the noise around product management, especially being a tech student in uni. You always get to hear a lot about these things, and that's when I first heard about PMing, and I was like, this kind of sounds like me because I'm, as I mentioned before, I'm a bit of a generalist. I never wish to be a specialist in anything in my life. I always want to be great at multiple things. So I thought product management really aligned with this personality of mine, where I get to influence how technical decisions are made. I get to work with engineers. I get to work on how things are built from scratch. I get to design things as well. I get to think about users, how they care about their problems being solved, and I still get to influence things in a larger business organization. So kind of brought tech, design, and business together for me. So I was at the intersection of that Venn diagram.
Yeah.
And that's when I that same e-commerce startup that I was working at, I was like, can I start managing the product as well? And at that time I was lucky enough to kind of do both at the same time while still working with a senior PM. And that was my first intro, my entry into the world of product management. And that's when I wanted to kind of explore more avenues of where PMing could lead me to. And that's when I thought of switching industries and going from e-commerce to SaaS. And those are completely two different ways of doing PM as well. So as I said, product management is different from industry to industry, company to company. There's no fixed way of being a product manager or of doing product management. In some companies like Google or any big tech companies, product managers are very, very strategic. They spend a lot of their days thinking about product strategy, vision, and aligning multiple stakeholders to kind of buy in on that strategy. Whereas in smaller scale startups, product managers are both strategic as well as very, very tactical. So get their hands dirty on the ground, working with engineers, product designers, actually building the product from scratch and shipping features. So which is why I'd like to mention that it's wildly different, company to company. Depends on the level of company that you're at. If it's an early seed startup, PMing would be completely something else as compared to like a growth startup or like a well-established startup versus big tech. So yeah, that was my journey into PMing, and yeah, a year and a half later, here am I.
Awesome, yeah. No, that's a pretty, I guess I'd say it's a pretty untraditional avenue into product management, like that you worked in an e-commerce startup and then just so happened to be an opportunity. So I just wanted to ask little bit about your first product interview. Did you ever have one for product management outside of I guess you did have one for deputy, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to ask a little bit about the skills that you sort of had to identify that you had to learn ahead of that time to prepare for that interview.
Yeah, I think this will kind of align with the things that I mentioned before, like the critical or the essential skills that people would need to succeed or be a product manager. I think one of the things that you get tested a lot in interviews is obviously how well you can break down a very ambiguous problem. Very similar to how case interviews or case study interviews are structured in consulting roles. But the context is different. It's more user-centric or customer-oriented, so you always have to like kind of put that hat on and not care about like moving money for a minute and care about what people really want or what the problem you're solving will really do for people. So I guess if I were to break those kind of things down from an interview standpoint, critical problem solving again, like how do you break down a very, very big ambiguous problem in front of you and kind of prioritize or chunk that in meaningful I guess bundles of work, being able to estimate, because like the business always wants kind of answers from you as to, okay, you're solving this problem now, when will it be done by? So that's where you kind of wear that project manager cap as well and try to estimate how big or like what's the scale of the problem that you're solving, how long will this take from an engineering standpoint or like from a tech standpoint or from a product standpoint. How well do you prioritize those things that you've estimated, and how do you actually get started on the execution? So I'd say from that, like I'd like to deconstruct a couple of concepts. So from that entire process, we have the thing that I mentioned before, product sense. So how well can you think of like a problem and break it down on a product level? So that's one. And the second part is execution sense, which is, okay, we've solved the product problem now. How well can you execute on this? So it's kind of divided into those two parts, and you get tested on those kind of things, or you get asked questions which indirectly test those skills for you. I personally wasn't asked this, but a lot of companies do look for like big bang creative thinking, because like we are like PMs are the change makers of any organization from a product standpoint. Like we have the power in our hands to make a feature this way or that way. So looking at like how big or how creative you can think on the spot about any given problem is, I guess, another thing that comes up a lot in a lot of PM interviews, apart from very generic questions which are more behavioral and more soft skill focused. But yeah, I think even though those are underrated, I'd say soft skills in a PM role trump technical skills any given day, because you can learn system design when you're actually working as a PM. You can learn like software architecture. You can learn how to wireframe on Figma, or you could learn how to form a monetization strategy. You can do all of those things. You can learn all of those things, especially when you're young or early career. But you can't, you can only learn how to resolve conflict, or you can only resolve how to align 100 different people in the company to buy in on what you're building by actually doing it.
Yeah.
So you need to have like that level of threshold, that certain level of, I guess, soft skills in you, that patience, that grit, that I guess high agency or hope that this will all work out, and I'm trying my best to do it.
Yeah. And touching on that point of soft skills, is there a way you sort of honed your soft skills over time? Was it through maybe public speaking in your early years? Was it kind of just putting yourself out there, doing case competitions during uni, perhaps?
Yeah, I guess like doing hackathons, actually just like, I think it all boils down to this one central thing, right? Which is making yourself uncomfortable. Like nobody really achieves anything when you're comfortable, sitting on your bed, watching Netflix or scrolling on Instagram. I think like a lot of things come out of discomfort, and I believe in perpetual discomfort. If that makes sense. Yeah. Not perpetual discomfort, like you not constant discomfort, perpetual discomfort, because discomfort doesn't have to be constant. You can be away from the source of discomfort, but you have to be perpetually in an uncomfortable spot in order to grow. And I guess that is kind of how it works for technical skills or hard skills, where if you're learning a very difficult concept, you're actually like, you're racking your brains and you're like, I can't figure this out, but eventually you will. Same thing with soft skills. Like you actually have to put yourself out there, see how people work, see how people operate, and try to reflect on those and try to imbibe those same values and see how you could kind of channelize them into your own work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's awesome. That reminds me of something my friend said recently. He was like, he got invited to this opportunity to speak as like a reflector on his experience in industry in front of like a crowd of probably around 100 people. He said the first thing that came to his mind was that, hell no, I can't do this. But then he realized that exact reason of saying no is why he exactly should do it.
Exactly.
His brain was screaming no, but he knew he had to kind of push himself out of his comfort zone.
Every single day, even for this podcast today, like I was standing in front of the mirror and I was like, should I do it? Should I just like flake? I'll just say like, oh, sorry, I think something came up. Like all those things, like these are coming. This is like your inner voice, like trying to protect you from like danger. Like obviously the instinctual, how like evolution has worked for us, but like I just chose to show up. Like that's what you do. You just show up. You just do things, irregardless of what the outcome will be.
Yeah. And
like if you do 10 things, eight of them are gonna obviously do you some good. And yeah, that's what you just do things. Like you don't care about what they will get you. Will this get me a promotion if I do this? Will I get some money out of it? You just do it for the sake of doing it. And yeah, that's how I fight discomfort.
It's great.
Instead of like shutting myself down, I'm just like, I just want to do it. Like
send it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have any follow-up questions?
Not really a follow-up question, but I find that really interesting because as a perspective of a student looking at someone from like the industry, you think like, oh, they're like comfortable, they're already like
absolutely not. Every day. That's a lie. Yeah. I think that's and when I was a student, I always used to look up to like at a networking event or like someone who I would meet outside of uni who is in the industry doing very cool things and be like, I want to be like them. Like I want to be that person. They have their life sorted, right? But I think like at the end of the day, like all of us are our own people. We have our own struggles and challenges, but what makes us like succeed is overcoming them day by day. And yeah, I think like nobody sees like internal struggles or like the inner lives that we had and the decisions or the questions that we come up with internally. But yeah, I think when I realized or when I actualized that human like angle of like people are people, that's when I kind of like I said, even I can do that then. If they did it, then like why can't I? And it just brings you some perspective into like thinking. It just like narrows the gap between what you see them as versus what they are.
Yeah. Kind of seeing everyone on an equal playing field and not really putting anyone on like a pedestal.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Awesome. I guess that kind of concludes that segment about your background.
So as a student right now, where should I get started? What are some actionable steps that I could take to build the experience necessary to land a role as a product manager? Should I be building a portfolio, creating side hustles? What are your thoughts about this?
That's a great question, and I think like I have reflected on that a similar question for the last couple of months ever since I've worked in product, because I didn't have that level of guidance that I can now provide to people, like being early career and telling people that this is what I would do, or these are the things that I would like focus on in order to actually get better at like solving product problems. I think one of the things that I I think I saw a tweet, or I heard this from my manager, I don't remember. But like ever since I've heard this, I recommend this to everyone because this has changed my life as well as a product manager. And I think I don't know if I mentioned it in one of the Prodigy mentoring sessions, but one thing that I would recommend every single, be it like an aspiring PM or like an existing PM to do if they haven't already been doing it, is analyze every single product or app that you use every day very, very closely. Like Instagram, just, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but I think I've talked about it now I remember it because I was thinking of an example. But Instagram recently launched this like new page when you scroll through stories where it recommends or suggests you like 4 different reels.
Oh, it does. I haven't used that.
Yeah. So like most of the people would just mindlessly scroll through it, or like either like click on like a reel and get interested and then get sucked in a like a real black hole.
Yeah.
But I was very interested by that because I completely missed that for the first couple of times when they first launched it, and I asked other friends of mine. I was like, "Are you getting this or no?" They're like, "We haven't." Like, no. I asked most of my friends. They're like, "We haven't gotten this thing that you have got." And then I like, because I'm a power user, not a power user, but I use Instagram regularly, and I started noticing it again and again, and I was like, why is this like obviously like if it's only being targeted to me and not my friends, then they obviously haven't, like, either they're A/B testing it or they haven't done like a full-fledged release for this, or they're just testing out a new beta feature. And then I thought, like, what's the, like, okay, it's smart placement, so it makes sense in the overall flow of like going through stories. Like it's still presented in a story format, and it presents you 4 different reels to choose from, and 4 might be a magic number. They must have tested it through metrics of optimizing. If they have too many, if they have like 6 reels, then people will just lose focus and swipe ahead. They only have a millisecond to capture someone's attention. The first reel, the music of the story always comes from the first reel, the audio. So the first reel always has to be optimized according to your tastes. And if you do click on a reel, then you've successfully converted into using that feature, or you've adopted that. And then, like, when you're watching reels on Instagram, it's again like a black hole. You just get sucked into it. So I was thinking overall the goal of that would be to actually get people to like explore more reels and like get stuck in that dark pattern of using reels. Because I was thinking, why would you suggest like reels in stories? Like, people can put their own reels in stories, but why would you recommend like 4 different reels for me to choose from? And I was thinking, like, that's how you kind of break down like a simple product feature from a design standpoint, from a commercial standpoint, and from like, if you think about how it was implemented, then pretty much like according to what you want to optimize, you like kind of stack up the top 4 reels that any given user on Instagram would choose from, and try to rank them from what they would click on to least clickable, and randomize it in like one of every N stories that they watch. So that's kind of that's one thing that I analyzed for the first time from a product. And I was like, this kind of makes sense, and that kind of gives you perspective on how a product manager at Instagram would actually think about it. Think about breaking the thing down from a design UX standpoint, from a tech standpoint, from a commercial standpoint. Similar things, like we all use Google Maps, we all use Uber, Spotify, Apple Music, Instagram. There's so many things to like kind of look out for, and see why was this product decision made this way. Like, why does Uber show you like that black line on the map? Or like, why do they choose their own UI of the map instead of relying on just like, showing a Google Maps view? Like, all of these are like great things to think about. And like by closely looking at how you interact with products is like how somebody else would interact with products every day. And that kind of gives you an insight into like building better solutions for people.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I would recommend everyone to do, regardless of if they're aspiring or already in the industry. I started following these product people on Instagram, on Twitter and LinkedIn after I broke into product. And I think once you're in the industry, like having that constant source of knowledge when you open up LinkedIn or when you open up Twitter to kind of reinforce everything that you've been doing day to day. And like that really helps, because it's basically like you do something over a couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months, but you don't actually like actualize what you've learned or what you've done. But then you read a tweet and you're like, PMs do this, and I'm like, whoa, like that's actually kind of what I was doing over the last couple of months. So like once you have that constant source of like reading material in front of you, you like it reinforces everything that you've learned, and it like speeds up your growth in a particular area. So I would recommend anyone to kind of follow. I follow my favorite product person to follow is Shreyas Doshi, who was a product manager at Stripe, and he's now like an investor, and he invests in a variety of different startups in the Bay Area. Ravi Mehta, who was the chief product officer at Tinder, and before that has worked at like a couple of big names. I think he worked at, I'm not sure if he worked at Netflix, but he worked at Expedia or like travel, I think TripAdvisor. So all of these people, Julie Zhao, she's a product design VP at LinkedIn. I think Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm really forgetting my names, but having at least like building up a list of people that you can constantly turn back to when you need inspiration or when you're just feeling down or you don't know what to do, really helps. Like whenever I'm feeling kind of stuck, I either talk to my manager about like day-to-day work and more like inspirational PM work, or I turn to these people who I learn a lot from. Like, so it's just like really digestible things that you can kind of, you're on the tram, you're on the train, you're literally brushing your teeth. You can digest these things very quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Just while on the topic of inspirational product people, might throw another few names in the hat. I really like watching Gary Tan. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Sounds familiar.
He's the Y Combinator guy. I think he's becoming Y Combinator CEO. But yeah, he makes like very good videos on YouTube for product managers, like people who want to break in, learn more.
Yeah.
So definitely recommend checking out his stuff. And also Marty Kagan is also.
Marty Kagan, yeah. I was gonna talk about his book Inspired.
Oh, okay. I'll leave it all up to you then.
Yeah, no, because I actually haven't read it till now, and I recently started. I'm only a couple of pages into it, and I've heard about that book from so many people. And Marty Kagan, obviously, like I follow him on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. He's a great person to follow. Yeah. Have you read the book? Or?
I'm actually reading it right now as well.
Oh, cool.
That's why I'm putting the name.
Yeah, we should spar like when we're actually like reading it concurrently.
Yeah. I'm a few chapters in now. I think I'm up to like the one about engineers or something. But we can definitely talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I guess sorry. Were you gonna say something else about?
From like if people want more, I guess, structured sources of knowledge, then I really, really recommend Lenny's. I don't know if he's a very famous product guy. He was, I think the first growth PM at Airbnb, and he has this weekly newsletter which is amazing. Like it's very like growth indexed. So like how do you grow products? But it's a fantastic read for anyone who's kind of into newsletters. Like if there's one product newsletter that I would recommend anyone to follow, it's Lenny's newsletter. And like Lenny has like a huge community and like a following around him. So there's a Lenny meetup every 3 months in Sydney, some different parts of the world like New York, San Francisco, London. Like there's a Lenny fan group almost, where like a bunch of product people, product designers, engineers, PMs get together and discuss product principles or product things. So Lenny's newsletter is one thing. I actually haven't read a lot of product-oriented books, but one that I'm reading right now is The Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen. I think he's one of the partners at the venture capital firm Horowitz. Andrew, like he's like his partners, Andrew Horowitz. But it's like the book is about like how do you like obviously start. Like how do you deal with the cold start the problem? Like how do you go from 0 to 1? How do you grow? And like it draws on like case studies from Uber, Slack, Netflix, and how they kind of scaled their products from what they were to what they are now. It's a very, very interesting one. The reason why I haven't gotten into a lot of product books is because I know that they put you in like a certain frame of mind when you're reading them, but like being a PM, I just keep my reading list very, very open, and I try to like draw inspiration from a variety of different sources. So I read a lot of fiction, I read a lot of non-fiction, be it business, psychology, whatever. I just keep my plate open, and I like I'm not the kind of person who would just like finish a book, pick up another.
Yeah.
I read like multiple books at the same time. I drop some and then I pick them up back in a different month or in a different year. So I'm a very like messy reader. And I think what that does is just keeps my brain stimulated, not just from a singular perspective, but like gives me the energy and that creativity to think outside of what I would usually think.
Yeah. For each book, do you keep like a reading list where you write down like a summary of what you learn from the book, or is it sort of just like more of a mental note?
I try to. I've actually I try to stay on top of that. I do maintain a list of books that I've read over the last couple of months, over the year.
Yeah.
But in terms of summary, I think I try to I started writing Goodreads reviews because I was like, that will force me to kind of think very actively about what a book made me feel, but that didn't work out well given my short attention span. So now I try to just like jot down 3 most important points that I learned from a book. And then I think another thing is that I try to reread a good book, because I think given in a world where we live by like people are just like on Instagram that I'm trying to read like 1,000 books this year, and I'm like, how are you getting time to read 1,000 books?
Exactly.
I think like if I read like 5 good books in a year, my goal is to like read at least 2 to like kind of fill up for that that gap of time where I actually haven't read anything, because I think like rereading is actually much more important than reading for me, because you need to reinforce the learning that you've done when you're reading the book for the first time in order for it to actually actualize it in real life somewhere. Yeah. So I think, I was always that person. I was like, I'm done with the book, I'm just going to pick up another new one. But I think I've made it a point now to actually reread a good book.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good advice. Thanks for all that in terms of what students should do right now. Like you said, looking at the UX, looking at the kind of product design decisions that we put into an app, and then obviously following a lot of these informative product channels and a lot of sources, reading those books. It's really good.
Yeah.
So now I want to dive into kind of the opposite side of the spectrum, and talk about some common mistakes that students, you might have seen some students or people have taken on their way to pursuing a career in product management. Are there some common pitfalls that you've identified people fall into?
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of PMs get called out on, especially when they're interviewing, is, and I think like it kind of goes back to how a lot of PMs come from very technical backgrounds. Like a lot of job ads on LinkedIn, they say a computer science degree is preferred, but it's not required. Ironically enough, like a lot of companies are looking for like PMs who are technically oriented, which attracts a lot of students who are interested in tech in general. what that means to a lot of people who are interviewing or who are about to interview for like PM is they think that they have to really index on being technical rather than like for me it boils down to that singular split of like technical versus soft. And I feel I would prefer a person always who has better soft skills than technical skills. Like sure, technical skills are great to have, and you need to have a certain threshold of them in order to actually succeed as a PM. But as I mentioned before, like soft skills trump technical skills every single day. And I guess that's what a lot of people get wrong. Like they'll be great engineers by like doing these lead code problems every day, and they'll have a design portfolio saying like they know how to really solve problems from a UX standpoint, but they can't really communicate what they've done. So that, and I guess another common pitfall that I see is people not talking enough about their leadership positions, because that's like one inherent thing that's required of a PM from the get-go when you step into a role. Like even from associates, like if you think about joining as an associate engineer versus an associate PM, wildly different skill sets. An associate PM is kind of thrown into like they're thrown under the bus and they're like, you're kind of like the CEO of your product, like sink or swim. So you have to possess those natural leadership skills from the get-go. And if you can make it very, very clear to whoever you're interviewing with or people that you talk to, be it through, I was a president at like this XYZ uni society, or like I volunteered and like held leadership positions for these many things. I think that really like kind of puts you like it makes you stand out as compared to someone who has a brilliant portfolio, has like a great background, has a 7 GPA, all those things. So soft skills, leadership, and of course like when you're actually in, like these things will get you the interview, but when you're actually in the interview, like being able to critically think about problems, applying those same like UX principles, how well can you think about like breaking down ambiguous problems into solvable chunks. These things matter, and that's why kind of like people like lack. So for PMs, I'd say inductive reasoning is much more important than deductive reasoning, because you already have the world in front of you, like the world is full of problems. How well can you go from like top to bottom and break it down into like how well can you build a pyramid? Instead of like going, okay, like if this assumption is true, then this will also be true, and then this will also be true. And then you build a product which is just based on a series of assumptions that wouldn't necessarily benefit anyone. Yeah. So I guess programming teaches you good deductive reasoning, but you also have to be very good at breaking down like big picture. How do I break it down into smaller things?
Yeah. So basically like modularizing things
Correct.
down.
Yeah, okay. Spot on.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I know like a lot of students are unsure going into PM, you know, what sort of mistakes. They don't honestly know what mistakes they're making in the process of applying. Yeah. So that's really good.
Yeah.
I find it really interesting how you talk about the importance of leadership, because I remember, I think I heard it from you like a few weeks back, but you said something like influence without authority. Yeah. And it's quite interesting how that plays a part in a team environment.
Absolutely, because like if you're working with a team of engineers or product designers or like other stakeholders, you wouldn't necessarily you're not the CEO. You don't have authority over them. So how do you actually influence them persuade them through your communication style, through your personality traits, so that the team can move forward? Sometimes it's hard, but I think that's what makes it worth it. I guess TLDR is like communication, leadership, and collaboration. Like all three of them work together. They're like three sides of the same triangle, I guess. Yeah. I guess those three things a lot of students, and I mean it's kind of harsh as well, because when you're a student, you're not necessarily equipped. You're young. You need experience for all of these things. You're not necessarily equipped for all of these things when you're a student. But I think, as I mentioned before, like putting yourself out there and making sure that you're actually actively working towards improving these particular things, and realizing that technical skills can still be learned on the job. They're going to change from job to job even. Like you might be asked to like write an SQL query for one of your PM roles, whereas for the other you would be asked to make like a 15 slide deck on explaining product strategy. So these things can vary from job to job. You might not know how to even use Google Slides so you will struggle at that job, but you might be very good at writing SQL. So that's why I believe in technical skills being better for being learned on the fly as compared to soft skills, which are very hard to learn on the fly.
Yeah.
It's kind of you build them incrementally over time.
Yeah. 100%. All right, cool. All right, I think we'll go on to the closing up questions.
Yeah.
As a question, I guess, based on reading Inspired by Marty Kagan, and we just mentioned about collaboration, what are your thoughts on working in person versus hybrid versus working online? Like, I know Marty Kagan
Love that
says,
question.
like you should definitely be in office if possible with all all the stakeholders in your team, because that's how real collaboration is formed. And then you see things like with Elon Musk and Tesla, all employees must be in office. So,
I think I've ever since because I moved from Brisbane to Sydney and I started working in Deputy remotely. I think definitely PMing for me has become much easier in person, especially because you spend a lot of time generating alignment between people, and a lot of people don't really understand how much energy it takes to align two or more people together on an idea and how to move things. And communication, I feel like when you're communicating through a screen, it's time bound, and it's also kind of lacks some how do I even explain it, things that you would talk about on Zoom would be very different to things you would talk about in person. It kind of I think talking through a screen kind of restricts things for you. So I think PMing is definitely easier if done in person.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I believe that hybrid work is much better for holistically thinking about the role, because you need an equal split of time for actually doing deep work, which remote work or working at home is much better for. And for the other half where you're your week is very collaboration or communication heavy, going into the office and actually talking to people and talking about things in real life, that really helps.
Yeah.
Another thing apart from just the internal company perspective is talking to customers, which is very, very important for being a PM, because talking to customers really brings unique insights into how you operate and how you think about the problem space. I've learned that even talking to customers online versus offline shifts your perspectives massively, because when I'm online, I'm going into a customer interview, I go in with a script of I have these 9 questions that I definitely want to ask them. Sure, if they go on any tangents, I can explore those more interesting tangents, but I would ideally want to stick by the script and make sure that these questions that I've thought of that are going to fetch me a lot of insight, I make sure I just want to ask them that, and then it goes well, as compared to actually connecting with a person in real life. So I work in the shift work industry, actually going into a cafe and seeing how a manager would schedule their employees or communicate with their employees using a mobile app. That completely shifts perspectives on how a person is actually interacting with it versus how they're talking about how they interact with it. So from a PM standpoint, being able to connect with customers is a very important thing. And I think if that happens in real life, if you breathe the air that they breathe and you're on the ground really talking to them in person, that really does things for you that being online wouldn't. So yeah, I think it from a people standpoint, it definitely helps being in person, being in the office. both from internal and like external customer standpoint. At the same time, like respecting our own boundaries and when it's a very we have this concept called no meeting Monday, so I usually don't go on Mondays, which is today. So that is like really setting focus for the rest of your week and doing deep work on for instance writing requirements or reviewing designs or like all of these things, and the rest of the day is being very collaboration heavy, which is why I try to go into the office. So I think I'm definitely more of a hybrid person. I go in 3-4 days a week ish,
Right.
and try to do like 1 or 2 days from home.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're not team Elon.
Yeah, I mean,
not full Tesla.
I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I think I also feel like, since we're on that topic, that was a little bit harsh, but I see where he's coming from.
Yeah.
I think I see where he's coming from, but the way it was delivered wasn't necessarily the best.
Yeah,
and like the same thing could have been communicated in a way better, I guess, fashion. But yeah, I think I'm more of a hybrid person.
Yeah, no, I agree with 100% with what you said. I find personally, like when I'm at home just by myself, so there's not many distractions, that I get a lot more work done.
Absolutely.
In terms of deep work. But in terms of collaboration, so I've done like one internship that has been purely online, because most of my co-workers were in Canberra.
Yeah.
So yeah, like minimal interaction. I felt like I wasn't even part of the team sometimes.
Yeah.
And you don't really build that connection with people.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100% relate to what you've been saying.
And that's very, very important to even being successful PM. You have to build connections and relationships with people that you work with every day. Otherwise, your team's not going to succeed. And like when I was working from Brisbane, sometimes it feels very alienating when there are these 9 people in your team who are sitting in the same room in a meeting room, and you're the only one who's on a screen in front of everyone on a big large TV. So I'm like, God, I think I'm missing out on things.
Yeah.
They're discussing about, hey, let's go to coffee. And, let's get coffee after this. What do you want for lunch? All these things that I'm just oh man, I'm missing out on all of this.
Yeah, they were a great team, but every morning they were talking about grabbing lunch in Canberra and how good the food was in the weekend. I was just thinking just on this TV screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important for building connection, but at the same time, having our own space and time to do work, that split does wonder for me, which is why I'm more of a hybrid person. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, I think we'll wrap up there.
Yeah.
It's been a great session. All right, so we'll give a chance for you to also plug yourself. So listeners want to learn a little bit more about you or Deputy. Where can they go? Do you have a LinkedIn?
Yeah. The LinkedIn is by my name. It's Raunaq, or Ron Bahl. You can just look me up. Follow me on Instagram, which is not at all product content. It's just me pretentiously curating my Instagram feed.
Yeah.
I am not very active on Twitter. I don't tweet much, but I read a lot of stuff on Twitter, so it's not really worth following me on Twitter. But yeah, do LinkedIn, and I'm always up for coffee chats. So yeah, bubble tea, coffee.
Bubble tea.
Yeah, dinner. Anything works. Yeah, if you're a student, the coffee's on me. Feel free to hit me up and ask any questions that you might have.
Oh geez, you might have just made a big offer out there.
Suddenly 100 people.
Messages. Got your coffee.
Let's get our coffee.
All right.
And then I look at my monthly budget and I'm like, shit, I did spend a lot of coffee.
All right. Do you want to close us off, Min?
Yeah, so I just want to give you a big thank you, Vaughan, for sharing your experiences as an associate product manager. Before we finish off, we were wondering if you have any final words of advice for the audience listening to this podcast, or who are near graduation and are interested in the world of product.
Yeah, I think I'm really bad with these questions, because when I'm in the flow and we're actually talking about things, things they just spring up naturally.
Yeah.
But when someone puts me on spot, do you have any final closing words? Tell me about yourself. Those things are oh my God. But if you're interested in product, I think make sure that you question whether you really, really have the passion for it and why you want to get into product. For me, as I mentioned, the motivation was that I'm a bit of a generalist, and I like to do a variety of different things while not sticking into one thing in particular. Find your why, because when you're actually doing product management, people will actually come to you to ask the why. So make sure that you have your why figured out first before you actually get into a role and people come to you like, why are we building this? So yeah, I guess that purpose.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much again. We'll finish here for today, but yeah, it was great having you on, Raun. Love to have you back. Maybe
Thank you for having me. Yeah, absolutely.
Potentially, no.
Yeah.
Maybe down the track, we'll definitely run this back.
Yeah.
But I hope everyone listening online learned something today, and we can catch you again next time in the next episode of DigiDive.
Thank you.